This video clip focuses on strategies for factoring difficult trinomials. What is a difficult trinomial? It's a trinomial in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c, where a isn't the GCF. So what that means is the number in front, I'll use a highlight, of the x squared is not a 1, it's a number that cannot be divided into the other two numbers. So in other words, there's no GCF and there's a coefficient in front of the x squared. It's really important to recognize that. And that's called a difficult or hard trinomial. So how do we factor? Well, there are a number of ways to factor. Your textbook will show you probably about 3 methods. I'm going to show you 2 methods. So I'm going to show you the cross method. And the cross method involves a cross. So I'll go through the steps to show you. And again, you may choose to use it or you may use any method that you feel comfortable with. So here's my example. Factor 2n squared plus 13n plus 6. In this method, I take factors of my first term, factors of my last term. Factors are 2n and n, factors are 6 and 1, and 2 and 3. And then the next step is I have to decide what factors to use and how to arrange them on my cross. So my first step is find the factors. My second step is I need to make an arrangement on the cross. And the arrangement is vertical. So first step, factors. Second step is vertical arrangement. Now to get my vertical arrangement, I know this middle term, I'll highlight it here, is 13. Well, it's greater than the first and the last number. So in other words, if I look at these factors, it would make more sense to use these two. And this one's only got one set. So I'm going to write down vertically, second step, 2n, n, and let's try putting 6 here and 1 here. Now I'll scroll down so you can see. You have to notice something right here, that these guys could be 1 and 6, these guys could be n and 2n. So I don't know if I'm completely done right now. So my third step is I cross multiply and add products. So what I mean by cross multiplying, I very quickly go 2n times 1 is 2n, 6 times n is 6n, and what does that add up to? Well, 2 plus 6 is 8n. That doesn't add up to the middle term. No. So when you cross multiply and add the products, they have to add to middle term. You say, well, this seems like a whole bunch of work. It does get easier when you've done it. So let's do it again. Leave this here and put the 6 here and the 1 here. Now cross multiply. 2n times 6 is 12n plus n is 13n. Yay! It works. So for my answer, I simply circle these, and here's my factored answer. So what are the steps? Let's scroll back up. Take factors, because you're going to be trying one in a minute, factors of the first term, factors of the second term. Choose which factors, if there's more than one set, that you're going to use because they have to add up to this term. I set up my cross, And then to do a quick check, I cross multiply and add the products. Do they add up to the middle term? If they don't, you have to switch the order. Now I'm going to let you try one. Try. Again, it's a skill. And in this case, you might get pretty good at it. Alrighty. I like to circle. I like to circle. Did you ask yourself factors? Did you ask yourself factors? This one might be a bit trickier because we could have 1 or negative 10 or 5 and negative 2 or negative 5 and 2. Well, let's do a cross. And let's put a 3x and an x. Now before I even put the factors in, I know if I put 10 in, well, let's try a 10. Let's put a 10 and a negative 1. By the way, that should be a negative 1. That should be a positive 10. Is that going to work out? Well, negative 3 plus 10 doesn't add up. That's not going to work out. And if I put a negative 10 in, that's going to be too large. So these guys won't work. It's almost a little bit of guess and check in factoring, I find. So let's try 5 and negative 2 or 2 and negative 5. Because the middle term is negative, I would choose a bigger negative number. So I'm going to put a 2 here. Let's scroll down so you can see it. 3x, I'd put a negative 2 here, or 2 here, sorry, not negative, and because negative 5 here. Will that work out? Well, if I cross and I cross, I get negative 15x plus 2x is negative 13x. Wow. So what's my answer? Well, I simply put my brackets. 3x plus 2x minus 5. Wow, you've done it. Again, the tricky part is, scroll here, because it's a negative, it's going to have 4 factors, possibilities, and this term is also negative, so that's what makes it a little bit tricky. Okay, there's one more method, and it's being called bottoms up. Now this doesn't involve quite so much guessing, but it's easy to make a mistake if you're not careful. Let's factor 4x squared plus 4x minus 3. So your very first step is number 1, multiply first term by last. Okay, zip, zip, x squared plus 4x minus 12. Pretty straightforward. Second step, factor as simple trinomial. So we know how to factor a simple trinomial. Remember, x times x squared, factors of negative 12 that add up to 4 plus 6, negative 2. This is the part that people make mistakes with. They say, oh, I'm factored. No, you're not. Because you multiplied the 4 by the 3, you have to put the 4 back in. And it's called bottoms up because a 4 goes underneath the numbers. So we say step 3, I call it bottoms up, replace 4 under the numbers, or the last term. Because you put it in, you multiplied it out, you factored, you've got to put it back in. Now last step is simplify. So that has to be simplified. 3 goes in 2 goes into 6 3 times, 2 goes into 4. That becomes 1/2. Now you could leave it like that, simple, or you could write it where you bring the 2 up. They're equivalent. Bring the 2 up beside the x. And you factor it by doing bottoms up. All right, I'd like you to try one. Try this one. Okay, pause. Step 1, x squared plus 10x minus 24. Did you get that step? Multiply first by last. First by last. Next step is factor. Did you factor this out? X and x. And factors of 24. Negative 6. Negative. No, it's not right. What would it be? Negative. Positive 12. Negative 2. Now be careful. There's more than one factor. Am I done? Nope. Replace or bottoms up. The 3. Am I done? Simplify. And I could write like that if I'd like, and I am done. Did you do it that way? So yeah, first times last, factor, replace, simplify. FFRS. Now the only thing to watch, and I'm going to put a star here when we're doing factoring, if you can't find the GCF, find GCF first. Otherwise, this method won't work. So if you're given an example, if there's a GCF like this, 6x squared minus 21x plus 9, and I say to factor that, well, if you start multiplying 6 by 9, this method does not work if you do it that way. You have to find the GCF first. So in other words, you'd have to go by 3, 2x squared minus 7x plus 3. Then you would do your difficult trinomial. So just a word of advice when you use the bottoms up method. Again, look in your textbook, look for examples, and try them. And also go on to the videos that are on the site and get lots of practice. We'll see you later.